The grand hall was filled with the sound of music and laughter as the alien queen celebrated her latest victory. It was a special evening, and every member of her royal court had gathered to honor her. The towering walls of the palace gleamed with gold, and the air was thick with the sweet scent of alien flowers. The queen, as always, looked stunning. Her bright blue skin shimmered under the lights. Her regal attire flowed like liquid silver. The banquet was a moment for the queen to relax, to take a break from her duties, and enjoy the company of her most trusted allies. She smiled as she raised a glass, making small talk with those closest to her. She seemed at peace, though there was a strange tension in her eyes. No one could have guessed that this celebration would soon turn into a scene of panic and fear. It started quietly, just a slight wobble in the queen's step, as she moved across the room to speak with a counselor. The music seemed to grow louder, the laughter even more distant, and the air itself felt thicker, heavier. Then, in a split second, the queen collapsed to the floor. A hush fell over the room. For a moment, everyone thought it was a joke, a part of some strange tradition or ritual. But when the queen didn't move, the panic set in. Several of her advisors rushed to her side, and some of the royal healers quickly followed. The entire hall was filled with nervous whispers. "Someone fetch the doctors." One of the advisors shouted. One of the healers, skilled alien medic named Vroth, began examining the queen. His hands moved quickly, checking for any signs of a simple injury. But as he examined her, his face grew pale. His fingers hovered above the queen's chest, his body trembling. She's not breathing properly," Vroth muttered. "Her heart rate is erratic." The royal guards, all alien warriors, stood by in confusion. They were trained to protect their queen from physical threats, but none of them had ever seen anything like this. Their queen had never shown any weakness before. Her strength was legendary, and now she was laying motionless on the floor, her once powerful presence reduced to nothing. The atmosphere in the room was tense as healers rushed to the queen's side. But there was no time to waste. The situation was growing worse by the second. Some of the counselors began to panic, whispering amongst themselves. Others looked to the palace guards for answers, though no one had a clue what was happening. In the midst of the chaos, Marcus, a human soldier stationed as a guard in the palace, stood still near the doorway. He had been a member of the royal guard for some time, though he wasn't quite accustomed to the alien traditions and politics. Still, he was a man of discipline, and he had learned to observe things carefully as others rushed to help. Marcus noticed something strange. The queen's pulse was faint but steady, almost as if it were being suppressed by something. Marcus had seen enough strange things in his time serving in the palace. He had witnessed alien technology, observed the complex politics between the different species, and seen the queen herself in action. But this was different. There was something about the way she collapsed that didn't make sense. It wasn't a typical medical emergency. It was as if someone or something had been controlling her body in ways she couldn't understand. He wasn't trained as a medic, but Marcus had a sharp mind and a steady hand. While the alien healers and advisors scrambled to figure out what was wrong, Marcus made his way over to the queen's side. He watched Vroth as the healer tried to stabilize her with various tools and potions. None of them seemed to work. "What's happening to her?" Marcus asked, his voice low. Vroth, too focused on the queen to answer, only muttered, "We're doing everything we can." "But she's not responding to our treatments." Marcus's eyes narrowed. He wasn't sure what was going on, but something felt wrong. The queen was more than just a leader to the alien people. She was a symbol of their entire empire. If she were to die or be incapacitated, the very foundation of their civilization could crumble. Marcus looked over at the other guards, who were standing stiffly, unsure of what to do. They had never seen anything like this before, and neither had Marcus. He could feel the pressure building. He had to do something. "Get me a diagnostic scanner," Marcus said suddenly, his voice rising above the chaos. One of the royal technicians, a young alien with silver hair, nodded quickly and rushed to get the scanner. Marcus held his breath as the device was placed. Next to the queen, the machine beeped softly as it analyzed her condition. But the results were unclear. "This can't be right," the technician said, his voice trembling. "It looks like she's being affected by something that shouldn't be possible." ... "What do you mean?" Marcus asked, stepping closer. The technician shook his head, eyes wide. "Her heart is acting as if it's under extreme stress, but there's no external cause. There's no wounds, no poison in her system. ... It doesn't make sense." Marcus frowned. There was one thing that had been bothering him, one thing he couldn't shake from his mind. The Queen had been fine moments before, standing proud, her composure unshaken. But now she lay unconscious, and no one could explain why. This wasn't just a heart attack, it was something more. With a renewed sense of determination, Marcus made a decision. He would find out what had happened to the Queen, even if it meant risking his life. He wasn't a doctor or healer, but he had served in dangerous places before. He wasn't afraid to face the unknown. As the commotion continued around him, Marcus slipped out of the room, determined to uncover the truth. Marcus moved quickly through the corridors of the royal palace, his boots making soft echoes on the marble floor. His mind raced with questions. What had caused the Queen to collapse? Why did the healers seem so helpless? He couldn't stop thinking about the strange, weak pulse he had detected earlier. Everything about the Queen's condition didn't add up. There had to be more to it than just a simple health issue. He didn't want to believe it, but the possibility of foul play hung over his thoughts. Could someone have harmed the Queen? Marcus had heard rumors of conspiracies within the royal court, whispers of betrayal among the Queen's closest advisors. Could one of them have been involved in this strange illness? His first stop was the medical wing. He didn't have the authority to speak with the palace doctors directly, but he knew they wouldn't turn him away if he played his cards right. He approached one of the senior healers, an older alien named Fail, who was known for his experience and calm demeanor. "Fail," Marcus began, his voice steady but urgent. "Can you tell me what's really going on with the Queen?" Fail turned. Slowly, his gray eyes meeting Marcus's with a tired expression. "It's not as simple as it seems," he said, his voice low. "We've examined her body and done every test we know, but there's no visible cause for her condition." "Then what is it? Why isn't she responding to any of your treatments?" Marcus asked, pressing further. Fail sighed deeply, looking at the floor as if he were searching for the right words. "The Queen's heart, it's reacting in ways we've never seen. We've treated her for heart-related issues before, but this time it's different. It's almost like her body is under extreme stress, but there's no sign of external injury, no infection. Symptoms don't match anything in our medical records." Marcus frowned. Something about Fell's words didn't sit right with him. The lack of any physical injury didn't rule out the possibility of poison. But poison didn't usually affect the heart in this way. "I need access to her personal records," Marcus said firmly. "Everything you've got, medical and otherwise." Hesitated. "I can't just give you her private files, Marcus. You know the rules." "I'm not asking for anything personal," Marcus replied quickly. "I just need to understand what happened to her, and I'm not going to get those answers unless I see the full picture." After a long pause, Feo reluctantly nodded. "Fine, but you'll have to speak to the Queen's head guard first. He has to give you clearance." Marcus thanked him and quickly made his way to the security wing of the palace. He passed through several locked doors, each more secure than the last, until he reached the office of Captain Lorne, the head guard. Captain Lorne was a towering figure, his bright green skin and sharp features standing out, even in the shadowy office. He looked up as Marcus entered, raising an eyebrow. "Marcus, what brings you here?" "Need to talk to you about the Queen," Marcus said. "I think there's more to her condition than we know, and I need access to her medical records." Lorne stood up, crossing his arms. "I've already been briefed on the situation. I don't think there's anything more to it." Marcus could tell Lorne wasn't entirely convinced, but he wasn't backing down. "You and I both know that something's wrong. The healers can't explain it. The fact that it's not showing up in any scans means we're dealing with something far more serious than a heart attack." Lorne's eyes narrowed. "What are you suggesting?" "I don't know yet, but I need to see everything," Marcus said. "Please, the Queen's life could be at risk." For a moment, there was a tense silence. Lorne looked at Marcus, as if weighing the situation in his mind. Finally, he sighed and motioned to a console. "In the corner of the room, I'll give you access. But if you do anything to jeopardize the Queen's safety, you'll answer to me." Marcus nodded in understanding, quickly went to the console and entered his credentials. The screen flickered, then displayed the Queen's medical records, followed by a series of reports and notes. As Marcus scanned the files, his eyes narrowed. There was a common thread throughout the records, an unusual stress factor that had been slowly building up in the Queen's body over the past few months. It wasn't a disease or a simple medical condition. It was something more subtle, invisible strain that seemed to be wearing her down from the inside. He found a note from one of the Queen's medical aides, a young alien named Zella, that caught his attention. The note referred to a dark presence that the Queen had spoken of during her last examination. Zella had written that the Queen claimed to feel as if something was controlling her, making her body act against her will. Marcus reread the note. Several times, the Queen had mentioned something strange, something that the healers had overlooked. But if the Queen herself had sensed it, then it had to be real. What had she meant by dark presence? Suddenly it clicked. Marcus thought back to the strange mood shifts the Queen had experienced in the days leading up to her collapse. She had been distant and irritable, almost as if she were under the influence of something outside her control. Before Marcus could process this new information, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned to see Captain Lorne standing in the doorway, his arms crossed tightly. "Are you done?" Lorne asked sharply. Marcus stood up quickly, closing the records on the console. "I need to speak to the Queen's advisors. There's something they're not telling us." Lorne nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "Be careful, Marcus. You're walking a dangerous line." Marcus didn't respond. He had no intention of stopping until he uncovered the truth. The halls of the royal palace were eerily quiet as Marcus walked through the corridors, the weight of what he had just discovered pressing down on him. He had seen many things during his time as a guard, but nothing like this. The Queen, the heart of their empire, was in danger, and it seemed that no one, not even the most skilled healers, could figure out why. But Marcus knew something was off. He was determined to find the answers. He walked briskly towards the Queen's private chambers. He had to speak to her closest advisors. He had to learn more about what had happened in the days before the Queen's collapse. He had already started piecing things together, but there were still too many unanswered questions. Marcus paused for a moment, collecting his thoughts. There were many things he could do, but the most important one right now was to gain the trust of the Queen's inner circle. He knew they might not be easy to convince, especially when they didn't want to believe that something was amiss with the Queen still. He had no choice. If he wanted to save her, he had to push forward. He stepped into the advisor's room and found a group of the Queen's closest officials gathered around a large table. They looked up as he entered, their faces tense with worry. It had been hours since the Queen's collapse. None of them had been able to bring any good news. "Marcus, what are you doing here?" One of the advisors, an older alien named Talia, asked sharply. "I need to speak with you about the Queen," Marcus said, his voice calm but firm. "There's something more going on here than we realize. The healers haven't been able to find the cause, and I think it's because they're missing something important." Talia's eyes narrowed. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that this isn't a simple medical issue," Marcus replied. "I believe the Queen is being affected by something more than just a health problem. The healers don't have the full picture." The advisors exchanged uneasy glances. Clearly didn't want to believe Marcus, but there was something in his voice, something that made them hesitate. A brief moment. It seemed as if they were considering what he had said. "I've been looking through the Queen's medical records," Marcus continued. "There's something in her recent history that doesn't fit. She's been under stress for weeks, but it's not just from her duties. There's something or someone that has been pushing her beyond her limits." Dahlia looked at him, her face hardening. "What are you implying? That there's a conspiracy within the palace?" Marcus hesitated before answering. "I don't know yet, but I'm starting to believe that the Queen's collapse wasn't just random. There may be something or someone influencing her, something we've all overlooked." For a moment, no one spoke. The room was filled with an uncomfortable silence. Finally, another advisor, a younger alien named Nira, spoke up. "I've heard whispers among the staff," she said quietly. "Some say that the Queen has been acting differently. She's been distant. Her moods change without warning, and she seems to be losing control of herself." Marcus nodded. "Exactly. That's what I've been hearing as well. Not just stress from her duties. She's been afraid, as if something is forcing her to behave this way." Talia stood up abruptly. "This is madness. The Queen is not weak. She's the strongest leader we've ever had. We cannot let these rumors distract us." Marcus didn't back down. "Oh, Marcus, I'm not saying she's weak. No, Marcus. I'm saying that something is happening to her, something that's beyond her control. If we don't figure it out, she could be in even more danger." There was a long pause, and for the first time the advisors seemed to take Marcus seriously. They looked at each other, uncertainty written across their faces. Finally, Talia spoke again, her voice quieter this time. "If what you're saying is true, then we need to act quickly. We cannot let this go on any longer." Marcus nodded, relieved that they were finally starting to understand.
"But
"I think we need to find out who or what is behind this. I've been looking through her records, and I found something odd. She mentioned a dark presence before her collapse." "Dark presence?" Nira repeated, her voice filled with confusion. Marcus nodded. "Yes. The Queen said that something was controlling her, pushing her in ways she couldn't understand. We need to find out what that means. It might be the key to everything." Talia frowned. "You're suggesting that someone is manipulating her mind?" Marcus didn't want to jump to conclusions, but he could feel the weight of the situation. "I don't know yet, but it's a possibility. We need to speak to the Queen's medical aides and get to the bottom of it." The room fell silent once again as the advisors processed what Marcus had said. Finally, Talia spoke. "Fine. We'll allow you to investigate further, but you must be careful. If there is a conspiracy, it's not something we can expose easily." Marcus understood the danger. If there were a plot against the Queen, it would be dangerous for everyone involved, but he wasn't afraid. He had a duty to protect her. He wasn't going to stop until he had the answers. He turned to leave, but before he could, Nira stopped him. "Marcus, if you find anything, anything at all, you need to come to us immediately. We can't afford to make any mistakes." Marcus nodded. "I understand. Won't let anything happen to the Queen." As he left the room, Marcus felt a sense of purpose grow inside him. The answers were out there and he would find them. He knew the Queen's life depended on it. The quiet hum of the royal palace's medical wing was interrupted by the soft sound of footsteps. Marcus moved cautiously down the corridor, his mind racing with everything he had learned so far. He had spoken to the Queen's advisors, and while they were beginning to see the truth, they still didn't fully understand the gravity of the situation. Marcus knew they needed more answers. The Queen's life depended on it. He approached the medical lab, where the Queen's personal aides and medical experts worked to save her. Marcus had already seen the Queen's records. There was one person who could provide more insight: Zella, one of the Queen's trusted aides. She had been with the Queen for years and knew her better than anyone else. If anyone could shed light on the mysterious condition that had befallen her, it would be Zella. Marcus knocked softly on the door of the lab before stepping inside. Zella was sitting at a desk, her eyes glued to a series of medical screens, taking notes. She looked up when she heard him enter. "Marcus," she said with a weary smile. "What are you doing here? You should be resting." "I can't rest," Marcus replied. "Not while the Queen's life is at risk. Need your help. There's something strange going on, something we're all missing." Zella raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. She gestured for Marcus to sit down. "What's on your mind?" "I've been looking through the Queen's records and I found something disturbing," Marcus said, his voice low. "The Queen mentioned something about a dark presence. She said that something was controlling her, pushing her to act against her will." "Have you heard her say anything like that before?" Zella's face changed instantly, her expression turning serious. "I didn't want to believe it, but I've noticed it too. For the past few weeks, the Queen has been acting strangely. Like she's been fighting herself. She's not the same person she was before." Marcus leaned forward. What do you mean? Kind of strange behavior. Zella hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. She's been distant, distracted. Her decisions have been erratic. And there have been times when she's seemed almost ... afraid. It's hard to explain. She would say things like, I'm not in control, or it's too strong, I can't fight it. At first I thought she was just stressed, but now I'm not so sure. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't just stress. Something was happening to the queen, and it was far worse than he had imagined. Did she say anything else? Anything that might help us understand what's going on? Zella nodded slowly. A few days ago, she said she could feel something inside her, like it was trying to take over her mind. She was terrified, Marcus. She didn't know who to trust, and she didn't want anyone to find out. I think she knew that whatever it was ... was dangerous. Marcus felt a deep sense of unease settle in his chest. The queen's words echoed in his mind, I'm not in control. What kind of force could do this to a being as powerful as the queen? And why had no one noticed it sooner? I have to speak to the queen, Marcus said, standing up. I need to get to the bottom of this. Zella looked at him with a mix of concern and hope. I don't know if she'll be able to speak to you right now. She's been unconscious for most of the day. Her body is exhausted, and her mind... Zella trailed off, as if she couldn't find the right words. Marcus nodded. I understand, but I have to try. If there's any chance she can help us understand what's happening, I have to take it. Zella stood up as well, walking over to the medical scanner. You'll need to be careful, Marcus. If the queen is truly under the influence of something, we don't know what it might do. I'll be careful, Marcus promised. I have to do this for the queen, for the Empire. The two of them walked to the queen's private chambers, where a team of healers stood watch. They parted to let Marcus approach the queen's bed, her body still and motionless beneath the sheets. Her skin, usually so vibrant and full of energy, was pale and lifeless. Marcus's heart sank as he looked down at her. This was not the queen he had sworn to protect. He moved closer, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest. The healers had done their best, but they hadn't been able to reach the root of the problem. Marcus knew that the queen wasn't just physically ill. There was something deeper, something sinister at work. He couldn't explain it, but he could feel it in his bones as he stood there. Watching her sleep, Marcus felt a strange sensation. It was subtle at first, like a whisper at the edge of his thoughts. But it grew stronger, as though something was calling to him. He glanced around, but no one else seemed to notice anything. The healers continued their work, unaware of what was happening. The feeling intensified, and Marcus suddenly realized that it wasn't just a random sensation. It was the same feeling the queen had described, something inside her pushing against her will. He felt a deep pull toward the queen, as if something invisible was reaching out to him, without thinking. Marcus reached out and gently touched her hand. The moment his skin made contact with hers, the sensation became overwhelming. It was as if the very air around him had changed. Heavy with a dark energy that filled the room, suddenly the queen's eyes fluttered open. She looked up at him, her expression filled with fear and confusion. Her voice was barely a whisper as she spoke. Help me, Marcus, she said, her voice trembling. It's here, ... inside me. Can't stop it. Marcus's heart pounded. In his chest, the queen was aware of it now, just as he was. Whatever force had been controlling her was real. It was inside her. We'll figure this out, Marcus said, his voice steady. We'll get rid of it, I promise. Marcus felt his heart race as he looked down at the queen, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. She was barely conscious, but there was no mistaking the terror in her gaze. Whatever had been controlling her, whatever dark presence had taken, Hold was now fully aware of his presence. He could feel it, the weight of something unnatural in the air. The queen's words echoed in his mind. Help me. It's here. Inside me. The healers in the room seemed oblivious to what was happening. They continued with their work, adjusting medical devices and monitoring the queen's condition. But they didn't seem to notice the strange energy that filled the room. Marcus knew, deep down, that this wasn't just a physical illness. There was something else at play here, something powerful and dangerous. He had to confront it. He had to find a way to help the Queen, but he wasn't sure how. He had no knowledge of the dark forces that might be at work here, no training in dealing with supernatural threats. But one thing was clear: if he didn't act, the Queen might be lost forever. He bent down closer to her, his voice soft but urgent. "I'm here, Queen. You're not alone. Tell me what's happening. What is this force inside you?" The Queen's breathing was shallow, but she managed to whisper, "I don't know. ... It came from nowhere. I felt it when I woke up one morning. Like something was trying to push its way inside. First I thought it was just stress, but it ... it grew stronger. Controlled my thoughts, my actions. I couldn't stop it, and now it's too strong." Marcus's mind raced. He had to act fast. He could see the fear in her eyes, the desperation to be free of this unseen force. But he had no idea where to begin. How could a simple human like him fight something like this? He glanced at the healers, who were still working diligently, but they were focused on the wrong things. They were trying to treat symptoms, not the source of the problem. Marcus had to find the cause, and quickly. There was one person who might know more about the dark presence inside the Queen. It was risky, but Marcus had no choice. He had to find the Queen's most trusted advisor, being named Orcs. Orcs was a mysterious figure, often seen only in the shadows of the court. But he had an uncanny knowledge of the strange and the unexplained. If anyone could help, it was him. "I need to speak to Orcs," Marcus said firmly, standing up. He turned to the Queen. "Don't worry. I'll be back. We'll figure this out." The Queen's hand weakly reached out, gripping Marcus's arm. "Be careful," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "ERYX ... He's not who you think he is." Marcus froze for a moment, the words sinking in. Orcs was not who she thought he was. The warning sent a chill down his spine. Was Orcs somehow connected to this dark presence? Had he played a part in what was happening to the Queen? "I'll be careful," Marcus promised again. He turned and walked quickly out of the room, his mind whirling with questions. The Queen's warning had thrown him off balance, but he couldn't ignore the feeling that he was getting closer to the truth as he made his way through the palace. Marcus's thoughts continued to race. What if Orcs was involved in this somehow? What if he had been the one to manipulate the Queen? Marcus didn't trust easily, but the Queen's words weighed heavily on him. There was something about Orcs that didn't sit right. He reached Orcs's chambers and knocked on the door. There was no answer at first, but Marcus could hear movement inside. The door opened slowly, revealing Orcs standing in the doorway, his face shadowed by the dim light of the room. "Marcus," Orcs said, his voice calm and measured. "What brings you here?" "I need your help," Marcus said urgently. "It's the Queen. She's in danger. Something is controlling her, something dark. She's been acting strange, and I need to know what's happening. You're the only one who might have the answers." Orcs stepped aside, allowing Marcus to enter. The room was dimly lit, with ancient-looking scrolls and strange artifacts scattered around. The air was thick with the scent of incense, and Marcus couldn't help but feel a sense of unease as he entered. Orcs closed the door behind him, his eyes narrowing. "What makes you think I can help you with this?" Marcus didn't hesitate. The Queen said something about a dark presence inside her, like you know more about it than you're letting on. Orcs's expression didn't change, but Marcus saw a flicker of something in his eyes, something like recognition, but quickly masked by indifference. "Dark presence?" Orcs repeated. "That's a very vague term. I'm afraid you'll have to be more specific." "I'm not stupid, Orcs," Marcus said, his voice steady but firm. "I know something is going on. The Queen's been under attack, and I think it's been happening for longer than anyone realizes. She said it started out of nowhere, and she said it was trying to take over her mind. What is it, and why is it happening now?" Orcs remained silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on Marcus. Finally, he spoke. "Very well," he said, his voice softer now. "There is something ... dark. Yes, but it's not just inside her. It's inside all of us. Something ancient, something that has been waiting for the right time to rise again. The queen is ... vulnerable. She has been for some time, though she doesn't realize it. Tried to warn her, but she refused to listen. Marcus's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? Why didn't she listen to you? Why didn't you tell anyone? Eric's lips curled into a faint smile. Because the queen is not the only one who has secrets, Marcus. Marcus stood motionless as Eric's words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. The queen is vulnerable, he had said, and it sent a shiver down Marcus's spine. He had suspected something was wrong, but hearing those words from Eric's confirmed that this wasn't just a simple illness. The queen's collapse wasn't an accident, it was part of something much larger, something dangerous. Eric's cryptic smile still lingered on his face. You don't understand, Marcus? The queen has always been strong, but she has weaknesses, hidden ones that only a few of us know about. Marcus couldn't hide his frustration. Then why didn't you help her sooner? Why let this thing take hold of her if you knew something was wrong? Eric's raised a hand, signaling for calm. It's not as simple as you think. The dark presence she feels. It's not an enemy you can just fight. It's part of something much older than any of us. Something the queen's bloodline has carried for centuries. Marcus frowned, struggling to grasp what Eric's was saying. Hey, so this presence is something that's been inside her all along. Yes, Eric's replied, his tone serious now. The queen's family has long been tied to the ancient power that has slumbered in the shadows of the galaxy. It's an energy that can control, shape, and even destroy. But it's never fully awakened until now. Marcus's thoughts raced. The queen had mentioned a dark force, and now it seemed it had been inside her all this time, growing stronger, waiting for the right moment to strike. But why now? What had changed? Why is it waking up now? Marcus asked, his voice sharp. What made it choose the queen? Eric's eyes darkened. It didn't choose her. It was always tied to her bloodline. The queen's role in the empire has always kept it in check, but over the years the balance has weakened. The stress, the constant pressure from her leadership, it's slowly been chipping away at the control she has over this force. Marcus was starting to piece it together. The queen had been under immense pressure, balancing the empire's needs while keeping the dark force inside her at bay. Now, it was overwhelming her, taking control, and she couldn't fight it any longer. But there has to be a way to stop it, right? Marcus asked desperately. We can't just let the queen fall under its control. She's too important. The empire can't survive without her. Eric's turned away, his expression unreadable. Stopping it is not so simple. The force inside her is not something that can be easily removed or defeated. It's a part of her, and it will always be. The only way to free her from its grasp is to confront it head-on, and that requires a sacrifice. Marcus felt a knot tighten in his stomach. A sacrifice. What do you mean by that? Eric didn't immediately answer. Instead, he turned toward the window, gazing out into the night sky. The only way to truly rid the queen of this dark presence is for someone to take its place. The force needs a vessel, someone who can bear its power. Marcus's heart skipped a beat. Are you saying that someone has to sacrifice themselves to take the queen's place? Eric's turned back to face him, his eyes piercing. Yes, and the one who takes on the burden must be strong enough to control it. If they are not, they will be consumed by it, just as the queen is now. Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. This was more than he had bargained for. The weight of the decision was too much. To save the queen, someone would have to take on the dark power inside her. Could he do it? Could anyone? What if the wrong person takes the power? Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. If the wrong person takes the force, the consequences would be catastrophic, Eric's replied gravely. It could destroy everything, unravel the fabric of the galaxy itself. The dark presence is not something that can be controlled lightly, demands complete submission, and if it's not controlled, it will consume its host and everything around them. The room seemed to grow colder as Marcus processed Eric's words. The queen, the empire, and everything he cared about were at risk. The weight of the decision pressed on him. He could feel his mind racing. I don't know if I can do this, Marcus admitted, his voice strained. I'm just a guard. I've never faced anything like this before. Eric's looked at him, his expression softening just slightly. No one is ever truly ready for something like this. But sometimes a hero is made, not by choice, but by necessity. You've already shown courage by coming this far. That's what makes you different from others. Marcus stood in silence for a moment, the gravity of Eric's words settling in. He wasn't sure if he was ready to take on such a responsibility. But one thing was clear. Someone had to make the sacrifice. If they were going to save the Queen and the Empire. I don't have a choice, do I? Marcus asked, his voice filled with determination. No, Eric's replied simply. The Queen has no strength left to fight. If you want to save her, you must be willing to carry the burden. You may be the only one who can do it. Marcus's mind raced. The task before him was unimaginable. To take the Queen's place, to bear the weight of the dark presence that had tormented her, was a daunting and terrifying thought. But Marcus knew he couldn't let her suffer any longer. He couldn't let the Empire fall apart because of something that could be stopped. I'll do it, Marcus said, his voice steady, despite the fear that gripped his heart. I'll take the force inside her. I'll do whatever it takes to save her. Eric's nodded, his face expressionless. Then we must move quickly. The longer we wait, the stronger the force becomes. Is not on our side. Marcus took a deep breath, preparing himself for the unknown. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. He would not let the Queen, or anyone else, suffer at the hands of the dark power inside her.